Council is in session. Welcome, everyone. This is a place for the leading voices from across the industry to gather to talk news, titles, and everything indie. I'm your Master of Ceremonies, Jill Grote, the Indie Informer. And joining the Council today, we have, holding my career hostage with colorful charms, Jenny Wyndham.
Hello.
I blame you.
Oh, no.
I didn't get anything done yesterday, and we're going to talk about why.
Oh, my goodness. I take
Jenny's
full
fault.
responsibility, happily. You're welcome.
Also joining us is the eagle-eyed blue skyer, Mike Towndrow. I said it, and then it didn't sound right. I'm like, maybe that's not how we do it.
Hey, I almost cut my thumb off yesterday, or at least like 25% of it.
It's disgusting for anybody who's not watching.
That's just a Band-Aid. It's fine.
On Blue Sky or doing something else?
You cut it on Blue Sky for the content.
So I'm in my homemade French fry era where I'm cutting the potatoes and putting them in the air fryer, a little bit of oil, you salt them. They're delicious. They're wonderful. During lunch yesterday, or my lunch time yesterday, I was cutting a potato, and my precious little cat ciabatta decided to jump on me and climb up my back as I was mid slice.
Oh no!
And obviously that scared the shit out of me.
Yeah.
I slipped real hard, but thank God I had the dexterity to stop cutting and stop putting pressure on the knife, or else I'd be down like 10% of a thumb. But we're good.
I'm glad for your thumb. I'm glad ciabatta's okay. I was afraid ciabatta might become fried.
I know. I was very nervous about him with the knife.
Because he's really scary with knives. He's got skills.
There are all little jabs all over my back now. It's great.
Oh no!
He's a sweetheart. It's not his fault. It's fine.
No babies. I've gotten off topic, so let's just pretend like we're not and head over to indie news.
Sure.
Showcases are coming, y'all. This month looks like we've got Whitethorn Winter Showcase, February 6th. So for most people, the day you'll be watching this. Featured in the trailer, we've got Slime Heroes, Spray Paint Simulator, and Kernel Hearts. Some of those I'm looking very much forward to, and definitely there's more on the horizon. So I'm going to watch this with some interest, seeing what's going on. Do y'all have any guesses as to what we might be seeing here, or anything Whitethorn related?
I'm just excited to see more of Kernel Hearts. To be honest, I feel like we've gotten a lot of teaser, but at least I don't think I've had any hands-on time with it now that I can think about it. But for folks who aren't familiar, it's basically this like magical girls roguelike co-op RPG. And I love magical girls everything. And the co-op the co-op is intriguing. It feels like a really ambitious title for Whitethorn. So I'm excited to see just how they're going with it, and hopefully we get a little bit more gameplay content.
Yeah. I think the only reason I'm really as jazzed about it as I am is just the concept. So having any kind of anything on it, plus it's not really a showcase, but we should talk about the fact that Steam Next Fest is coming up, and probably some good time for that sort of information. Hopefully we get hands on things. I think Slime Heroes is coming soon. It's coming this year at least. I need to double check that, but yeah.
It's at the time of recording this, coming out next week.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
There you go.
Makes sense why you would want to check. So go check that out. Have a fun time with the showcase. We also are looking forward to an Idea to Xbox showcase kicking off IGN's Fan Fest February 24th, starting 10 a.m. PT. And I'll put a link in so you can read a lot more about what is going on, but they say specifically, get ready to see trailers, gameplay, and reveals from indie studios, including Raw Fury, Team 17, Akupura, 11-bit, and many others. Highlights include the next big collaboration for Balatro. So those are some good names there. I am especially looking forward. Raw Fury is doing blueprints, and I was saying that name out loud, and it's occurred to me that it sounds very much like Blueprints. And I'm like, why did I never put that together before?
It's my favorite part of the title. I'm like, y'all are just so big brain. It's amazing.
But the game itself is like fantastic. Mike.
Yes.
I cut you off. I feel sad. I wanted to hear.
Why'd you cut me off?
I don't know. You seemed so enthusiastic, and I was ready to hear, and I was just like, no, I'm not ready in my soul for that kind of enthusiasm. But now
I have the physical knife cut you, and now Jill has
Jill,
verbally
my emotional knife.
Emotional knife slicing through.
I think this show's gonna be a goddamn banger, y'all.
Yeah.
First off, if you're watching the video version, look at mommy down here. IGN first, WWE. We love Rhea Ripley. Anyways, sorry. The one name that really sticks out to me, I think it's kind of a dark horse of this entire showcase, is going to be Critical Reflex. Critical Reflex has been on such a roll lately, especially with their horror label. Of course, they put out Mouthwashing. They did Buckshot Roulette. They have a bunch of really cool things coming in the chamber. I'm really excited to see whether we get something new from them or just expanding on that library. I think they're really coming into their own, especially throughout last year. They've been around for a while, but especially last year, they really elevated themselves to a publisher to really look out for. The coolest, aside from Critical Reflex, I think the other super cool thing is Big Fan. We get to see a Big Fan project.
Do we think?
Which, of course, is the licensing label from Devolver, so a licensed video game from presumably an indie studio.
Do you think this is going to be our first official check off the bingo list? Do we get it here?
Possibly. I think there's a high probability.
Kind of have to, right?
Yeah.
It could be just an announcement to have an announcement.
Sure. Yeah, I'd imagine it's whether it's like, I don't know if it'll be like a full trailer, but maybe like, yeah, an announcement of whatever IP is, like a flash title screen, maybe a tiny little cinematic. But yeah, I'm excited to see whatever it might be.
Yeah, I also. Oh, go ahead, Jen.
I was just gonna say
my emotional life came out again.
Well, it's hard because I'm also not on video, so you can't like see the movement cues of me starting to talk. But yeah, I think when I saw Big Fan, I was like, all right, we're gonna get some IP reveals for sure. And then I'm excited because I don't know if y'all have been looking forward to like the Alters from 11-Bit Studios, but I know like the Alters has a Q1 2025 release window, and I'm like, this feels like a time in which either they drop it or they like announce the release date, at least because I don't think they have, if I'm remembering correctly. So I feel like from 11-Bit we should at least expect some Alters news, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, they've been showing that for a while. I think they pushed that back. It would be really cool to be able to see it. I was in last year at some point, I think early in the year. I was in a kind of preview session for that game, and I got to see a little bit behind the screen. So I'm like, that is a really cool concept, and I really want to see what that looks like in macro.
Yeah, so 11-Bit announced at least. I forgot 11-Bit is doing Death Howl. Death Howl looks sick as heck.
Yep. Super sick. It's got a demo out right now too. Y'all should go check it out.
Yeah, I haven't played it yet.
So does the Alters too, actually. Just check.
Yeah, so they have Death Howl, Alters, which is still slated for Q1 2025, and then I forgot they also are doing Moonlighter 2.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Moonlighter 2.
Okay, Moonlighter 2 news would be great right now. I think Moonlighter 2 is also on our bingo. Or maybe that's just in my head. It's just in my head. I also want to shout out Thunder Lotus is on this list, which is Immortals 33 Immortals. 33 Immortals.
It seems like we're ready for a date there, right?
Yeah, they've got the open beta that's going on. Like they pushed it out a little bit. So if you want to go try to sign up for that, you can still get into it as well. Don't Nod obviously is going to be mixed Lost Records. Dang it! I'm doing the mix up myself.
Yes, mixtape is as not Aquapara, Annapurna.
But also we have PlayStack on here, and they did talk about a Balatro collaboration, but Playstack is also doing like a cute packing stacking game that we saw a brief bit on. I want to say at the Game Awards or SGF or somewhere, one of the Keeley joints, which I'm interested in seeing again. So yeah, Raw Fury also Knights in Tight Spaces. Like I'm waiting for a lot of these people have games that I'm waiting for.
Even Panic is pretty stacked for their upcoming list. So they got a game that I thought came out like 3 years ago. Time Flies is slated for 2025.
No, that's been a long time in coming. I'm super excited.
It's wild, yeah. Of course, they got Big Walk, which is the big one. Despelate, Blippo Plus, and Herdling.
That looks fun.
I played it at PAX West, and it was really alpha. In the game sense.
Sure.
Yeah. That makes sense. It was like, I just want to herd and pet those like giant cow things.
I didn't have an option to pet, which was really upsetting, but they promised me it would come. So
okay.
Faith forward. I was feeling feelings, and I loved the beauty of like getting out of the griminess of the big city and into the like beauty of the open freedom and stuff. But yeah, there was a lot there that was like rough, and I would love to see a kind of smoother version of it to see exactly what we're going to do. Who's got Karen? Is Karen in here somewhere? I feel like it is. I'm looking it up. Nobody panic.
I thought you were asking about Karen, which is my mom's name, and you just scared. You just really startled.
How's your mom, Mike?
She's good. Yeah, she's all right.
I think Karen wasn't that the game bakers. It was the
game,
Haven.
Right?
Yeah,
it
was
Haven
like
folks.
the Haven folks.
Yeah, because I really want some kind of news from that.
Yeah,
they've been.
I don't think they're in here, but
lately.
2025 release date, but it doesn't look like we've got anything here. But it'd be great to see them. And yeah, and this is also very exciting for me because GDC is coming up in March. I love GDC. It's my favorite of the events pretty much. And a lot of ID at Xbox stuff ends up over at GDC. So hopefully I get to go hands-on with a lot of stuff we see during this event. What are you scrolling, Mike? What are you looking at?
No, I'm curious what last year looked like in terms of like.
It was like these are usually really good showcases. It's pretty full and exciting stuff. Yeah, Tales of Iron 2 I'll talk about later. It's a good game. Promise Mascot Agency. I can't wait.
Oh, this is probably our lead-in. Okay. This is probably when we'll find out about AAA.
Oh, okay. Okay, so not only is it going to be good for indie news, it'll probably be good for our Indie 2025 bingo. So keep an eye on that, everybody.
Maybe. This happened in... Last year, ID at Xbox happened in April, which was obviously a little closer if we're assuming AAA is the same time of the year. Anyways.
Maybe they wanted to get out of the way.
Yeah. What do you guys think the Balatro collab is? Who's getting a Queen of Hearts next? They got some heavy hitters in there.
They do. They have Stardew in there. They've got The Witcher, I think.
Cult of Lamb, Witcher.
1,000 times resist.
1,000 times resist.
How can we forget?
Yep.
Is it Master Chief? Because it's Xbox.
Oh yeah. I don't know.
Is it Car from Forza?
Do you think it'll be an indie or a big, like more of a AAA feel?
I don't know. I think because it's on an Xbox show, it makes me think it's a first party Xbox.
And it's joint. Like explicitly called out. Yeah. I think it might be a big one.
I think it is probably... Isn't Avowed like in the next couple weeks? It's probably Avowed.
It could be Avowed. I don't know if they have enough like determined recognizable characters in Avowed to have that happen. Yeah. I think Avowed is a kind of like custom creation.
You get this man.
Yeah.
This little skeleton man.
Skeleton man. Look at that.
These guys. Look
at
that.
Big rhino beetle thing.
You got her?
Yeah. Little bear with...
This one with the flower face?
Hey.
Is it a burr? Yeah.
Little burr?
Little burr.
Yeah.
Anyways.
I don't know what I was thinking about. Those are all recognizable things.
Yeah. Bear number 3.
Bear number 3. And speaking of 1,000 Times Resist, by the way, I just want to shout out that it sold 70,000 copies in its first 4 months.
Yay.
Congrats. I saw this, and this is news that they were very excited about, and rightfully so. We're so happy for them. But it did make me think very much of how differently, most of the time, a lot of the time, indie games rate success versus like a AAA game. Where like a AAA game can be like, we've sold 100 million copies and that's so disappointing. And here
Dragon
we are
Age.
with 70,000 copies. Right? I'm like, I'm sort of taken aback by the news that it was not deemed a success.
Do we know the numbers for
I
Dragon
think
Age?
we saw, like, I don't know if they released exact numbers. You can check me on it, but it seems like they were not particularly happy with the reception of it. So yeah, just another interesting question about the industry as a whole as to sustainable practices and like what you have to do to be a success and why indie games might be doing well in the space. But unless Mike wants to say something very quickly before I transit.
Just, yeah, I mean, reinforcing what you just said, Bloomberg reports it sold 1.5 mil in the first quarter.
There we go.
How is that? Never mind.
That's what I'm saying.
I guess it's like, yeah, they have to
sure, it's also like $1 trillion game, probably.
Yeah, it's a scale thing, I'm sure. But yeah, it is kind of like, okay, but again, you're selling that much and you're disappointed probably because your CEOs are sad they're not going to get a bigger bonus.
Yeah.
Versus an indie title where it's a little bit, it's a little different context.
It's like 1,000 Times Resist. It's their first game, and relatively, like, if I made something that sold 70,000 copies, I'd be jazzed, you know? But yeah, speaking about the industry as a whole, I came across a Polygon article not too long ago about the sort of big stories and trends and themes happening in video games in 2025, which I will link below. But I'm going to skip down to the indie section because they have an entire section which they have entitled Indie Survival in a Busy Game, in a Busy Year of AAA. I'm going to go ahead and read from that. It says, last year, I wrote at length about how the release of thousands of games a year has become a challenge for both the people who play games and who create them. But as difficult as last year was for indie developers, they had relatively few major AAA releases to compete against. They won't be so fortunate this year. Some of the biggest franchises in gaming will be getting new releases this year, accompanied by mainstream marketing campaigns that will fill website banner ads and major sporting event commercial breaks. I wonder why they couldn't just say
the big game.
Independent creators won't just have to compete for gamers' money, but for their time. Many of the big new releases are meant to consume dozens, if not hundreds of hours, occupying permanent residence on millions of hard drives. In 2024, games like Enshrouded, Balatro, and Pacific Drive filled voids in the release calendar. Don't expect the indies of 2025 to have as many of those opportunities. I have some thoughts on the angle for this. But any first reactions from either of y'all before I jump into that?
I mean,
it's the same story every year.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those things that I think is exciting to like say, like it's a headline that definitely catches. But I think, for example, like Balatro is not a great example to throw down there because I think Balatro, even in a crowded year, would have stood out. And so I think indies always have had to vie for attention more than the AAA titles. It may be a little bit more challenging year to year depending on how heavy the slate is, but I think also this type of take underestimates sort of consumers and players and like how people know what they're interested in, and people have gotten really savvy at shifting through things and discovering indies even more every year. And so while I'm sure it's going to be challenging like any other year, I think there are going to be indies that still capture our attention and, you know, kind of find success even despite very, very big game launches.
Yeah, there's always been heavy hitters, and as this last paragraph notes, like Enshrouded, Balatro, and Pacific Drive filling the voids in the release calendar. There's also going to be voids, and like it's just about strategy and picking, choosing your battles. But the ones similar to these three titles, the ones that are doing something interesting and different in the space, will capture their audience. It might not be an overnight kind of thing, but it may be more of a groundswell, similar to what Balatro was in 2024.
Yeah, I also feel like. Oh, go ahead, Jill.
No, Jenny.
Well, I was just gonna say, at least for my like spending habits, like I know that also just anecdotally, I've had more friends ask about and purchase indie games because they're not able to spend like on a ton of AAA games. And it's like it feels better to maybe buy a few indie games and maybe one AAA game a year. And that's how I find myself spending my money and time, is like maybe I'll have one big game that I'll play a year, maybe two, but all the rest of my time is indies. And I know I'm a biased like sample size, and my friends are a biased sample size as well. But I think especially with like money and economy in the world being what it is, people aren't going to have the luxury of buying a ton of games. So it could go both ways. It could be maybe they only buy one game and they spend a ton of time with it. More likely, I feel like people will probably either buy cheaper indies or spend the time they have on the games that they already own, that are already live service and enduring.
I think this take is a little more relevant when it comes to like mainstream award ceremonies. Like if you're looking at the Game Awards for this year, you may not see an indie hit the best game of the year, even though we might be talking about one later. Who knows? But I am just astonished so far this year how many banger indie games have been. Like every week there are multiple games that are must play for indie games. And I think just as we go more and more, people are increasingly like indie games are a thing to watch. They are getting mainstream coverage. I don't think a lot of people who would be interested in indie games anyway, I guess, are doing the dichotomy of like big AAA versus indie. I think a lot of people do both, especially since a lot of indies you can get done in a couple of hours to 15 hours or so. So there's not exactly that huge butting heads competition of like, I have to get this 100-hour thing done. Like maybe when I'm tired of doing all of the quests in Avowed, I'll just pop over and play Spirit Swap for a bit, like you don't necessarily.
Do you mean Game of the Year contender Spirit Swap?
Yeah, obviously. So yeah,
better
I
than
think it's
Citizen Sleeper. What?
Oh my goodness.
Say it, Jill.
There are a lot of good games coming out. It's
like I don't know if I would say that.
Have I spent? I need to look now because I may have spent more time in Spirit Swap.
Oh snap!
Yeah,
gonna get that as our like box quote.
I can't freaking stop myself once I start playing that game. It's so good. So yeah, I think it's an interesting, familiar take on indies, which is changing because of just how many people are getting interested in the fact that indies are becoming a more mainstream thing. So I am very interested to see whether or not 2025, if the indies continue to pop up and be a big part of it, or maybe AAAs will take over. Who knows? We'll see.
I'm also just like trying to think. It feels like there's not that much happening in the AAA space. I could be like totally ignorant right now. Like aside from like obviously potentially Grand Theft Auto at the end of the year, obviously the Switch 2, but like I know February's got Monster Hunter and Like a Dragon. And then Xbox has their few smatterings, but like
it's times like this crazy where I feel really sad that Game Informer, Game Informer is gone, but specifically their release calendar was the best. Moment of silence for that. Yeah. But yeah,
trying to look and see if I can find a release calendar that could compare.
Yeah, releases.com is a little too thorough for this quick lookup.
I guess the Yakuza Pirate game, that's going to be kind of fun.
I do like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
like
there
the
are
Yakuza
like
sickos will love, well, like a dragon sickos will really attach themselves to it.
Yeah.
But like I feel like it's not like a Grand Theft Auto or a Witcher or like this like groundswell kind of thing. Great, I know like Kingdom Come seems to be like making the waves this week, but even that, like,
are
it
we
feels
calling
like
it AAA? But I'm not giving that any air. So,
But I think
I'm
just
interested
like
too. Oh, go ahead.
just as a final thought, like we kind of circled on it, but it's like you kind of go to these two different categories for different, like I go to my Infinity Nikki and my Final Fantasy because I want a very specific type of play, and then I go to indies for a specific type of play. So yeah, it's just like what we said at the beginning. It's kind of a not quite the headline I think it seems to be when you think about it.
Yeah.
I think also the Enshrouded call out there very interesting because they've recently come out and revealed a 2026 1.0 release. So 2026 may be the year of Enshrouded versus last year. But let's go ahead and skip on over to topic of the show. We are actually going to take on a topic from one Jenny Wyndham, who wanted to. We're going to look at how indie games contend with copycats. So we're looking at indie game shovelware copies that pop up on different platforms. Let's unpack what unpacking had to go through with a bunch of like stuff on the Switch shop. Mouthwashing just had one on the PlayStation Store, and we got a article right up from Rebecca Valentine herself speaking about consoles and eSlop. So let's jump into I don't know. Do we want to talk about just examples of it, or
yeah, because I think some people might not even know this is a thing.
Okay.
So
also,
when we're talking,
side note, Mike has just put up an eyeball, which I don't appreciate, Mike. This is the face of a copycat.
Mouthwashing.
That's what it is. Okay, go ahead, Jenny. Sorry.
Yeah. So what I've noticed, and I've had friends who are developers talking about this, and then it seems to be culminating in just even more sort of issues on storefronts where developers are finding copycat versions of their games on the platform. And I feel like this is pretty commonly known about on mobile, at least, where you like unpacking was one of the first examples I remember really paying attention to. But I've seen Animal Crossing simulators on mobile, a number of indie games just like getting duped, and people getting duped purchasing the game they think is like unpacking, but it's really not. But what's been interesting is in the last few, probably over the last year, but especially in the last like 6 months or so, the PlayStation Store, the Nintendo eShop especially, but even a little bit on other platforms and consoles like Xbox, we've noticed more games getting copycatted, more games getting duped. And so I found it really interesting. And then what was great is I mentioned this topic, and like a week later, Rebecca Valentine had an article drop, and I was like, oh my God. Because it's incredibly frustrating for the developers because their work is being plagiarized and copied, and it's not only affecting their profits and their ability to sustain their studio, but it's also affecting their community building because people play this other game that they think is from the studio and it's not. Yeah, I guess I'll stop there because I feel like I can just ramble, but is there anything else you both wanted to add on like what this issue just sort of at its core is?
I find it's interesting that it's primarily only on like a PlayStation platform and Nintendo platform, like Perpetual Mouthwashing and Anime Life Sim, taking the two most recent examples that have been on my radar. They're not on Steam. So like, I'm curious, like, is that a regulation play? Does like Nintendo and PlayStation really need to tighten up ship? I mean, the answer is yes, because eShop is a goddamn mess. But yeah, I just find it so interesting that there's really no regulations in place to prevent anything like this. Like, clearly there needs to be some sort of vetting process, not to make it harder for like an indie studio to like get on PSN or anything, but I've heard horror stories from indie devs, like just chatting at like expos and stuff, that like PlayStation in particular is like, they sometimes, depending on like your rep and whatever it may be, may not be like the most pleasant experience, and there's a lot of roadblocks and stuff. But meanwhile, you get something like perpetual mouthwashing that is literally mimicking environments and character models and art assets. It's pretty goddamn bonkers. And like, I guess you can make the argument that, as far as I'm aware, like mouthwashing isn't on PlayStation. So like, sure, you can't make that direct case with the first party. Same with Anime Life Sim. Obviously, Animal Crossing is not on PlayStation, but I don't know. There needs to be some sort of like safeguards here.
Like the difference between the two examples, I sort of understand Anime Life Sim in a way, because you're looking at this, if you can see this visually, you're looking at this and you're like, yeah, this is Animal Crossing. There's no way not to see it. But since Animal Crossing is a Nintendo specific title, maybe PlayStation wants to have that kind of experience on its store, and that's how it ends up happening. But like mouthwashing is not tied to any specific platform. Mouthwashing could come legitimately to PlayStation.
I mean, spoilers, it probably will at some point, especially with
knock on wood.
Reflex getting knock on wood, like with Critical Reflex gaining some traction and it getting all the praise it did towards the tail end of 2024.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's a little more boggling to me to see perpetual mouthwashing, the copycat, show up at PlayStation rather than just having mouthwashing on the system. Yeah. And for how hard I've heard it is to get indies onto these platforms, that a copycat could find it an easier find an easier time getting here, rather than, I'd love to see mouthwashing here. I would love to see that instead of this. So while Mike is looking into digging through
I did the same thing. I think it's a Czech company. So what's interesting, sorry, I have a frog in my throat. So I have most recently gone through like the certification process for Steam and Microsoft with Xbox for Spirit Swap, but I've had experience loosely going through certification with all of the platforms. But it's been a minute since Nintendo and PlayStation for me. What I read in Rebecca's article and what I remember from my experience is that the certification process, which it's not QA for folks who are like, is it the same as sort of quality checking for the game? It's not. When you have your game and you're getting ready to put it on a storefront, you have to go through what's called cert or lock check. And that is basically, will it work and will it function on their hardware? Will it not have like major errors? If not, great. But they're not checking it for like, is this similar to another game? Or is this like an AI asset or, anything like that? And so with Microsoft, they go in a game by game basis. So even if you're an established studio, you still have to do like individual game submissions. Whereas from what I read in the article, PlayStation and Nintendo seem to have a more studio or developer focused submission process. So once you've gone through it once, it's a little bit easier for you to kind of go through it again and not get like as stringently checked, or they're not going to like, you're familiar in their system. And so it's not as difficult. And that seems to be part of the reason why this is happening a little bit more on Nintendo and a little bit more on PlayStation compared to somewhere like Xbox. But I also haven't done submissions for Nintendo or PlayStation in a while, so I can't speak personally to that.
And yeah, like I do it a lot. I don't personally do it, but like clients and people I work with do it quite a bit as well. It seems like depending on like what they're submitting for and if there's like maybe like a Game Pass play here, it seems like Xbox like generally like likes to play the games or play a build as well at times, in addition to like the law check and whatnot. But yeah, it's interesting, Jenny, that you said that, like kind of like you're, I guess, grandfathered in a way if like the developer is already through the process. So this is from the Perpetual Mouthwashing developers, Trade 'em Up TCG Empire Shop, which dropped in December of last year, so a couple months ago.
Right after the other trading card game dropped, presumably.
Trading card simulator.
Presumably. So yeah, maybe because they already went through the process.
It was
that's
just
how they were able to get through.
It's possible. Yeah. To talk a little bit more about that process, I want to go over to a thread from Breyer, a game dev behind Unpacking, just talking about going through the rigmarole of having copycats show up on specifically eShop for them. And I'll put this whole thread down below so you can see it too, but it is originally just kind of a screenshot of all of the different kind of Switch copycats. So you've got the original Unpacking next to Unpacking Universe Dreams, Unpacking Deluxe Edition, Unpacking Chilled Music Pack, Unpacking Haunting Locations, Unpacking New Chapters. So it's just all of these things. And I'm thinking of like I just had a birthday and my parents got me a gift card for Roblox, which is so funny.
That's so cute.
Because like they understand enough of what I do to know that I play video games for a living. And they're like, okay, they've probably gone to a store and asked someone like, hey, what's a big game? And they don't know what they're looking at, or especially when you get into the indie scene, which is an even more niche section of gaming, that a lot more people in like retail probably won't be as knowledgeable about. So for them trying to get me a gift, like let's say they're trying to find Unpacking to give me. Now they have one out of like 20 choices to pick from to hopefully pick the right thing in order to like give me the actual game and help support the actual indie developer versus just a bunch of these copycats, which is really horrendous. But okay, looking at Ren's take on this, they say it's been over 2 weeks and these are still on the eShop. Nintendo hasn't responded to any of our reports of these egregious scams, which are using our trademark game name and purposefully tricking Nintendo customers into buying cheap fakes. Yeah, for a lot of these, they are cheaper noticeably, like they're on sale, which maybe will help out, but like just a general price, you're looking at like $8, $12 versus the 19 that Unpacking is, which also might gear people to like, hey, let me grab this one because if I'm going to pick the wrong one, I want to pick the cheaper wrong one, I guess. But continuing the thread, I want to be clear that I am a big Nintendo fan. It's my favorite platform and one of my favorite game studios. I just want them to take action on these fake games that are cashing in on misleading customers and using Unpacking's name and reputation to do so. And then a little bit later, they get an update that the fake Unpacking games are now gone from North America and various other eShops, but they're still available in Korea, Hong Kong, South and Central America, and South Africa. So like, it seems like they have to fight this country by country, region by region as well. So that adds another wrinkle to having to get all your stuff taken down and how much this process takes, how much a platform holder is willing to put that kind of maybe effort, resources into getting all this stuff off, because there is like, I'm going to jump over to Rebecca's article soon, but like, it's so easy to throw slop up and like not worry if it's going to get taken down because you'll get something in the meanwhile, you know? But before I jump over, do y'all want to talk about anything about Unpacking and that whole situation?
Unpacking specifically?
Or anything we've talked about so far. I don't want to cut anybody.
No knifing. So this is the developer behind Anime Life Sim, the Animal Crossing inspired game. It looks like this dev, they just started releasing games in December 2023, and since then they've released 39 games. If you're watching the video version, obviously Chain Through Hell, that's like a chain together spin. Coffee Simulator could be Coffee Talk. There's a bunch of cyberpunk stuff, I'm assuming to capitalize on cyberpunk. What I find most interesting is this TCG card shop game, which is the Anime Life Sim devs. Meanwhile, this TCG game is the Perpetual Mouthwashing devs. These key arts look a little too similar.
They look very similar.
Mm-hmm.
And not to accuse anybody of taking advantage of generative AI and whatever. I mean, that seems. I mean, you're making 39 games in a year. It seems like they're very much taking advantage of AI technology to just kind of like churn these things out.
Yeah, I mean, Jenny, you have a good question here on kind of what AI means as far as like allowing clones and how quickly it can produce things and what content moderation looks like and how to keep up with that. What are your sort of thoughts on how AI allows this stuff to grow like weeds?
I mean, what's really frustrating is part of the reason why, like especially on the eShop, and like in Unpacking's case, you can see there are multiple versions, bundles, copies being made, and all thrown out into the ether to be potentially picked up. And so these companies are already operating on a scale basis. They're like, okay, if we can flood everything just by sheer numbers, we will earn enough money to like make this scam worth it, because that's just the economics of the thing. And they've done this already largely through mostly like just like store-bought assets. So even before AI was a thing, this has been happening, and a lot of it was done just with it's called like store-bought assets, where you can go into the shop, pick up some models, throw them into an engine, and you can. It's a little more complicated than that, but you basically have a game. With the advent of AI, and I think Rebecca mentions in her article that it's not certain how many of these games are impacted by the use of AI and how much is being taken advantage of currently, but with just the way things are going, I don't see it decreasing. And it's just going to make filtering and management of this type of content much more difficult, because they're just going to be able to produce things at a higher rate with the, I guess, help of generative AI, unfortunately.
Right. Oh my gosh. Hello, baby. There is a cat now on the screen.
Sponsored cat break.
Yep, there we go. Everyone take a second. If you were mad about the AI and copycats, just take a look at this cute little creature enjoying Sir Peterton. It's not Petey. So I was yelled at earlier for asking if that was Petey. It's not Petey.
Trying to look at the camera.
So we've been talking a lot about this article from Rebecca Valentine. So let's go ahead and read it. It's got a fantastic title. Is everyone prepared for it? I could make Fart Fart Booby Fart the game, and maybe it would eventually get taken down. Devs reveal why the consoles are drowning in e-slop. She goes on to begin with, there's something goofy going on the PlayStation Store and Nintendo eShop. Over the last few months, the two storefronts have been slowly filling up with what some users are referring to as slop. Kotaku and Aftermath have both detailed this problem, highlighting how the eShop specifically seems to be advertising more and more games that are using a combination of generative AI and misleading store pages to trick users into purchasing cheap, low-quality games that aren't what they claim to be. This problem has recently spread to the PlayStation Store as well, filling the games to wish list section in particular with a lot of weird looking stuff. There's a link for over weird looking stuff, and I'm kind of afraid to click that. But the brave among you may. Critically, the games in question aren't just run-of-the-mill bad games. Unremarkable games get released every day on every storefront and have just as much right to be there as any other game. What's happening here is different. It's a seeming flood of very similar looking things that are crowding out everything else. The so-called slop games are usually sim games, almost always on sale perpetually, often play on themes used by other popular games or even rip off their concepts and names entirely, often use hyper-stylized art and screenshots that stink of generative AI, and usually in practice don't look or play anything like what the storefront images promise. They're often janky with poor controls, numerous technical issues, and often include very few features or anything interesting to do at all. What's more, As various users have pointed out, these games are often churned out mercilessly by a very small handful of companies. And as YouTube creator Dead Domain found out when they did a deep dive into the issue, these companies are seemingly impossible to track down and hold accountable, having little to no public websites or business information. Some even seem to be changing company names every so often to obfuscate, that's a good word, things even further. In recent months, there's been a growing outcry from users of both stores to get some degree of regulation on these storefronts and tone down what's being referred to as AI slop. This is especially true in the light of consumer complaints regarding the terrible technical performance of Nintendo's eShop, which seems to be running slower and slower every day as more and more games clog up each page. In an effort to get some answers on what's happening and what can be done, I looked into how these games are ending up on these storefronts en masse in the first place, why PlayStation and Nintendo storefronts are especially egregious right now, why Steam is seen as inoffensive from a user perspective, and why Xbox Store is relatively unaffected. Great intro to a much larger, more complicated, very well researched article from the great Rebecca Valentine. So please go check that out. And yeah, it's indie developers kind of being lost in the middle of all of this. The big questions about how AI is working and what that's going to do to different games. Oh, look, you have the whole thing up just for Rebecca. I'm afraid of what Horses 2025 is.
I really want to watch this Horses 2025 trailer.
I'm really afraid of what Horses 2025 is. That's
not real.
It's not real. I mean, I think it's real. I think it's legitimately like it's real footage.
Oh, it could just be stock footage, yeah.
Of like human beings riding on horses. That horse is gonna come to life and eat me. Yeah, no, these are not the same things. It's just for anybody who is listening to the audio, it's like cuts of horse documentaries and slightly graphicized horses standing around. But like, I'm sort of afraid that the horse is going to try to eat me at some point.
There's audio.
You got audio coming out of it. Sounds really inspirational. But like that's not what the game that's not game footage. That's human beings really doing stuff. Am I wrong?
When I said this isn't real, I'm assuming at first I was like, is this AI generated? But it could just be stock footage that they found.
Like this is 100% like the worst looking horse I've ever seen, and then we cut to like actual horse race footage, trying to pretend like that's
FPH, kind of first person
graphical something going on. It's like
this is a Budweiser commercial.
Bad. Yeah.
That you'll see during the big game.
It's so y'all horses 2025. I wonder if that's better than Horses 2024. You know, let's see.
You think that there was a Horses 2024?
Horses. If that's not a real game, we need to make that. So yeah. What?
When you search for Horses 2025 and click the link, there you go.
No. What happens?
Oh, sad.
Probably isn't what you're looking for. Yeah.
I did want to say one last thing about the storefront slop stuff. Because just to like put a bow on it, because solutions, what do we do about this problem? I mean, it's up to the platforms to try and figure out ways to moderate and figure out how to do some, I hate to say quality control, but essentially it would have to be some sort of filtering or quality control. But it's just difficult because what's already tough is that games can get rejected from the eShop just for sometimes unknowable reasons. When you put your game to go through cert or lot check, sometimes it's not slop, but they send it back and you don't really know why. Oftentimes you'll get a code, sometimes you don't. So I think this idea of filtering is a daunting one because, again, of the magnitude. But I would say kind of like, do y'all ever have to do those work training emails where they're like, this is how you figure out if this is spam? And they make you like read an email and look at, oh, it's got, instead of 1A in Sam, it's got 2 A's. So you know it's a fake. Oh my God, they're trying to get your money. So basically, when you're trying to look for games, this is why it's helpful to know, like, hey, if I'm buying this game, who is the studio? Just do a quick check. Am I buying the game from the studio? Is it labeled as from them? Is it labeled from the right publisher? Because when you check these games, they're not. So I would say the platforms work slowly. So we're going to have to just, as consumers, sort of pay attention ourselves for now, which is not a satisfactory answer, but it is, I think, what we have to do.
I have 3 points I would like to point out.
I would love to hear them.
That was a bad way to frame that sentence. First off, shout out to the main quest. This outlet.
Perfect.
And I don't mean that in a facetious way. Just like shout out to y'all. You found your niche.
Horse game.
Let's
go.
Like, can I just point out for anybody who's not looking directly at the word play, it is main as in MANE, and it's got a controller that looks vaguely like a horse with a mane flowing in the wind. It's fantastic. Good job, main quest.
The zoom did not work. Yeah, they did a real deep dive on Horses 2025, and a lot of it being so. It turns out short gameplay, blah blah blah, a lot of just AI generated stuff. The other thing I want to point out, this individual Hossein also did a TCG card shop game, which I will pull up the key art and the PlayStation Store page. Looks familiar. And the other funny thing, Horses 2025 is slated for February 2026.
I love it.
But yeah, it seems like it was taken down. I mean, obviously the video is unavailable here, which assuming it was the trailer. So it seems like they got. But yeah, the other card shop game, pull it up for video, folks. Guess what? It's the same goddamn key art.
Look at that. A small young adult female woman smiling with her face just a little her lips are just a little too long for me. It's kind of creeping me out. But yeah.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. I think, Jenny, you're right. I think the sad thing is that it does fall on the consumer to be aware and beware of these copycats and understand that this is happening. So like the first thing that's important for us is to share like this is a very common thing in case that is something people need to be aware about. To be able to talk about, first of all, just saying who the developers are of games is very important. A lot of times you don't hear that. I know a lot of times people will know the name of a game and not the developer, but for a lot of these, if you just look at the developer name very quickly, it's like letters 3000 or something. You're like, that doesn't sound like totally right. I think it's hard because like with a lot of scams, they're trying to take in the people who are not paying attention, the people who are not versed in things, the people who are vulnerable to being taken in by scams. So people, again, like my parents who may not know much about games, but know that I play them, like wanting to try to get me something and falling for this seems completely possible. And it's terrible, but I don't know how much can be done about it because the scammers obviously have good reason to do this. They make money and are unlikely to ever be held truly accountable. I don't know that there is a system of accountability. Like maybe their game will be taken down, which it looks like Horses 2025 was. But the money that they make before they get taken down is theirs. It's like, okay, it's not a scam in the fact that like you didn't deliver a game. It's not a good game, but you can't argue that there wasn't something there. You would have to go and grab every single one of these constantly popping up like Hydra heads and take them to court somehow and then try to like make them pay restitution in some way and then stay on them so that they actually did that. And it's so frustrating because it seems like just getting them taken down is hard enough, but actually holding them accountable for resources and liability and that sort of thing seems nigh impossible. I don't know if I'm being a little too cynical about that, but that's sort of how I feel. It's just, it is our job to be aware that this happens, tell other people that this happens, and keep an eye out because indies are becoming, as we said, a bigger and bigger thing, which is great for indies and we love the success. But with that comes people who are trying to just take advantage of that success. So I have a question for y'all. Is that how do you approach or differentiate game likes versus copycats? Because obviously when you have a game like Vampire Survivors that starts a whole new genre, and we're big fans of Goobies. We're a Goobies gang here. No one's going to argue that it's not a vampire-like or a Vampire Survivors-like. How do you differentiate that?
I think there's a difference between a straight-up copycat and something that is inspired by, or something that is in the same genre of a game that really hit it off. Like I would say, like if there was vampire killers, I don't know. Sure, maybe, and it's reusing some of the assets, and like you're picking up garlic and stuff like that. Sure, that is like a straight up clone. But like something like Goobies, it was something interesting in terms of its mechanics and different aesthetic. It's Bingo Bongo is the titular character over there doing some great things for the Gooby gang. So yeah, I think there is a stark difference between just like something that is inspired and like Souls likes. There's plenty of Souls likes out there, but yeah, I think something like a Goobies or a Keeper's Toll or a Brotato or something like that. Those aren't straight clones or copycats of Vampire Survivors. But again, yeah, I'm sure there's knockoffs of what Vampire Survivors is doing in terms of its nuanced mechanics, like maybe certain upgrades and stuff like that. Same with Souls likes. I kind of talked around in circles there, but you know what I mean.
So Jenny, how do you approach that kind of thing? We talked a little bit about personally as gamers, but like professionally, like how do you determine if a game is inspired by or cutting too close to the thing itself?
That's a really good question, because yeah, I was thinking about just this whole issue that we're talking about has so many layers of stuff that we haven't really defined or learned how to address. It's like we have plagiarism versus like well-intentioned sort of similarity versus like straight up copycat. We have the storefront issues. We have AI thrown into the mix just for fun. So yeah, this is super multifaceted. I'd have to think about it a bit more, but I agree with Mike. I think there's if I can look at something and see like identifying characteristics that make it its own, for me, I'm more inclined to see it as a inspired by versus a direct copycat. I think the perpetual mouthwashing is a great example because I look at that and I see, what's his name? Is it Curly?
Yeah.
Yeah, I see Curly. Like that is an iconography that is so definitively similar that it's like hard to not associate the two. And that's where it starts getting a little bit gray for me. But yeah, I think, I don't know, I'd have to think about, like, that's a good question and a big question, but it's hard because there's like, I think of students who maybe just are making not great games. Like I look at some of these games, like even the anime Life Sim or whatever that we were looking at earlier, I'm like, I could see that as a potential student game. But I think that's maybe a different category of like, well, how commercial are they hoping to go with this? Like, what was the goal in this project? Is it to go onto the Nintendo Switch, and are they naming it Animal Crossing or Anime Crossing? That's different than if it's a student game, making it for their friends, practicing and all that. But
yeah, it's like portfolio piece versus an actual commercial release. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, I don't think.
Yeah, but it's like if I look at the key art and they look exactly the same, the spidey senses start tingling. This kind of brings me back to like the Pal World discussions we were having earlier, because you don't want to, you don't want to, and you shouldn't be able to copyright like a mechanic, because that will ruin the industry. But at the same time, there has to be levels of like identifying IP, I guess, that you need to be able to have to tell games from one another. But we should get a lawyer on here. talk about that.
I do know a video game lawyer.
Yeah,
we do know
the video game lawyer. That would be great.
I have you guys had personal instances of brushing up against this sort of thing? Because I, as a journalist, and part of the job of my site being specifically to shout out indie games, I've had a few instances where I have looked at a game and said like, "Oh, you just taken said game, and maybe you've like, changed a few things in the paragraph and put your name on it." But I have sort of like passed on covering those things. But it's not a like broad, this is what counts as this is what counts as this. So like you could cover things. It's so difficult, especially since I've seen some of these games reach the levels of like shows, big events in the gaming industry, and you're like, how did this get here when this is a very like copycat of this? But
it's hard because it's like nothing, like there's no really original idea, right? So we're all like anyone who's creating art or a game or anything is drawing from something. And I think some of the best ways you can create is like taking a tried and true formula and then iterating on it. Like I think some of the best games we've gotten have done that, where it's like, oh my gosh, it feels just like this, but then they did this twist. And I feel like that's where for me it becomes again nebulous, but where I find it defining for myself is I'm like, what did they do to like make it their own or make it different? And maybe they didn't do it great, and that's okay. You can make bad you can make a bad version of something and still not be like a copycat or plagiarizing, but you have to be able to say like, this is what I added or this is what I contributed that was mine, that wasn't just me like taking this idea and just recreating it.
Yeah,
I think like the best example of that in recent memory is Liza P.
Mm-hmm.
Where Liza P for all intents and purposes, it is straight up Bloodborne, but obviously they use the very inspired world from Pinocchio, which is in the public domain, so up for grabs. But mechanically, very Bloodborne mechanically, but they still iterated on the Souls like mechanics and combat by doing their own thing with it. With the whole, it's been a while since I played Liza P, but the hilt and blade thing where you can kind of craft your or make your own weapons in different combinations and whatnot. Like that is a fascinating iteration on a mechanic or a combat system that the diehards adore, and they just kind of like made it their own and made it better for argument's sake. And even like not even like the systems in place, but like some even like the quality of life stuff of like in a Souls game, you like, let's say you die in a boss arena, your souls that you have to pick up are like under the boss's tail or whatever, so you gotta pick them up and hope you survive, or like maybe use an item to like get out of there before you die again. Whereas Liza P, you die in a boss arena, your souls, they're outside the arena, so you can pick up your souls and go back to a bonfire and like re-strategize. Like I think that is a fantastic example of like, sure, like I think when we all first saw it, it was like a little too close to comfort, but they kind of proved everybody wrong of like, sure, we are a love letter to FromSoft and Miyazaki and what that crew did with Bloodborne, but kind of carved our own space in there.
Yeah. I think my initial, the thing that popped in my head was Tunic, because I love that game so much. And it's unapologetically a like old school, isometric, Legend of Zelda game. Like along with the catalog that one might see in one of those earlier Zelda games. And it's like there is definitely a difference between that and like a copycat slop thing, but kind of deciding where it slides from one to the other is greatly more difficult, and you don't want to cut out entirely, because if it was like you can never make a game that's hinting at or a love letter to or taking iterations on things, like you wouldn't get these amazing games like Tunic and Lies of P. So that's a whole nother realm of a wrinkle in this problem of like you can't cut out people being inspired by your game, and you wouldn't want to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There is another kind of layer of this, and I'm going to be a little dicey here with the details, just because I don't want to put anybody on blast. And they were the folks I'm referring to. They were not in the fault. They just got kind of screwed and whatever. But similar to what Jenny was saying earlier, like developers could buy assets off like the Unreal store, for example, whether it is character models or like animations, whatever it may be. I think the most like obvious example of this, and it's I can't really point you into the right direction where it's an example, but there's a certain like basic character model that like a lot of indie developers use, and you could just kind of tell that like they are just like getting their bearings as developers, and they're just like kind of like asset shopping to build their game, which again, that's what those assets are there for. Totally fine. A former client of mine was in a situation where they were doing that just because it was a small, like 1 or 2 person development team. Like I think primarily 1 person, then plus like a tester, making like a fantastic use of like the Unreal shop, with animations and whatnot. One of the animations that they purchased, was directly lifted from a AAA developer. So my client had no idea. Like they just saw like, oh, that animation looks cool, I'm gonna buy it legally through Unreal, because that is just like and it's like fair use, like you're able to use that in your commercial games. But some folks started noticing that the animation was like a little too close for comfort, and yeah, it turns out that the creator of the animation straight up just ripped off the AAA animation. So that like got the indie developer in some hot goddamn water. Eventually like it was fine, and like things got sorted and stuff, but like right ahead of release, like that kind of just somebody cutting corners and just like asset flipping something to make a quick buck on the Unreal shop almost just destroyed so many years of unbelievably hard work for a really goddamn talented team. So that's kind of like another side of it that popped into mind when Jenny brought up the asset stuff.
It really is the ultimate problem with this, is like it's hard to make games. Like the fact that any game comes out and is playable is a miracle in and of itself, and the fact that there are amazing games out there is beyond that. It is the developers, and especially the indie developers, that suffer through this, because for a lot of these indie games, it is a small team. This one project is a make or break for them, and whether or not some scammer comes out of the woodwork to pop up on their success and tanks their game is a real tragedy. And the fact that there is no cut and dry or really any real reliable way of making sure that doesn't happen, it's almost like, hey, it's going to happen, just be prepared for it, like, is sort of terrifying.
Yeah. But at least we could leave all that nonsense behind and just focus on something like the best worst games to play on PC and console in 2025.
Oh my gosh, please run us down the list very quickly for the main quest. Shout out.
I'm not making fun of this outlet. I am.
I thought, Mike, you were going to say,
a niche.
I thought you were going to say, I'm not the main quest, which I doubt.
I am not the main quest.
Have you ever seen Mike and the main quest in the same room at the same time?
That's fair. No, shout out to Alice Rupert, who runs this site. It's goddamn incredible.
Good job, Alice. This is fantastic.
The Rancher Rivershine.
Want to shout out?
I love that
Sims
game.
4.
Sims 4 Horse Ranch.
Star
Equestrian.
A question. That's how you say that word.
I said it for you. No worries. Tales
of Rain Ravine. Free.
Did they fall down the ravine? I need to know. Oh, this one's pretty. This one looks like Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, it does.
Astride. What a great name.
Windstorm.
Windstorm, I'm super excited about. There's another one coming out soon. And I've like contacted with the creators. And I'm like, I actually am super into this. I wanna go horse crazy soon.
Also, shout out to Alice. I love that this list includes full review planned, full review not planned. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. It's hard to put out there. It's as a creator, it's hard to like stand by the fact that you're like, no, I'm not gonna do it. Breath of the Wild being actually in there. Yeah.
Tears of the Kingdom, the same thing.
You know, you heard what I said. Tears of the like that is one of the reasons why I really liked Breath of the Wild when it first came out, because I just spend my whole days just catching horses.
Eventually,
it's this one. Windstorm Legend of Kimori is the one that's coming out.
Let's see.
We're just a horse fan page now, everybody. The Indie Council Horses edition.
Honestly, my inner child would have loved this. Because I love the Barbie horse game.
Yeah, fantastic. Look what's happening here.
I don't know if
y'all.
I don't know. Did y'all hear
who are
audio?
Listening? Yes, we did.
Okay.
For folks who are just listening, we're looking at the Windstorm Steam page.
Yeah, it's cultivate your Mongolian nomad camp and contemplate missions to build your legacy as an ancient courier rider. Tame and train horses with specialized abilities to explore every aspect of a diverse landscape.
I mean, it looks kind of sick. So it's like Death Stranding with horses.
There you go. It's Strand games.
Strand games are here. They have means. Cats, what are you playing with? Anyways, sorry.
I can kind of hear it in the background. I don't know what they're doing, but we're worried about it. Okay, this is kind of a heavy topic, you know, except for the fart booby fart game, which I love that Rebecca Valentine made that her title. Perfect.
I also love that one of the biz dev guys from Devolver put out a Blue Sky post that was like, if you are making fart booby fart the game, please submit your pitch.
Reach out.
So I was like, that was very Devolver of him.
Yeah, we're gonna keep an eye out for that, and hopefully it becomes a real game. But in the meantime, let's talk about actual real games that we've been playing. We have kind of mentioned some of these throughout today's episode, but let's talk Spirit Swap, because I didn't get anything done yesterday because of Jenny. So Spirit Swap Lo-Fi Beats to Match 3-2, which is a great kind of play on words. Came out yesterday. No, the day before yesterday. It's dangerous. Like, basically don't touch it if you're not ready. You should be prepared when you go in, because every time I pick up this game, I swear I've only been playing for like 15, maybe 20 minutes, and I look up, it's been 3 hours. Mike, are you having this problem?
I hate to give Jenny and Alex and all them like even more credit, because I hate being nice to people's faces.
Yeah.
God
damn,
what
what
a
see
game.
Jenny like blushing.
That's true.
I know. I'm like, I did not intend, for folks who are watching, I did not intentionally not have my camera on, but I'm very grateful right now that I don't have my camera on.
Face is just red.
I've jokingly I've said it to Jenny, and like I DM'd Alex maybe like whenever I first started playing it. I've been jokingly calling this game gay Pokemon Snap. Not Snap, Puzzle League.
Yes.
But in all sincereness, like I have such a nostalgia for Pokemon Puzzle League in particular, but also like Tetris Attack, whatever, but mainly Pokemon Puzzle League. And like that's generally like a game that whenever I had a bad day at school or like my parents were fighting or whatever, I would just blast my tiny little CRT TV and just play through these puzzles and really just get lost in the puzzles. And it's that puzzle mechanic that what y'all did with Spirit Swap that really is just so alluring, and it's just so easy for the time to melt away. And I can't give y'all enough credit to like for absolutely crushing like obviously the overall vibe of the game with the unbelievably hot characters.
Unbelievably hot. It's like Hades with their characters, everyone's just hot. It's just like, but this on this one, everyone's really hot and gay. Everyone's just really, really hot and gay.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the vibes are immaculate, but like the core mechanic of this game, like the puzzles are so satisfying to go through. And I think me and Jill were talking about it before you hopped on, Jenny, that like you jump into endless mode, it truly is endless mode. Like you can't stop.
You cannot. It's literally
like there were multiple times where like I had shit to do and like I would automatically just like push the puzzle up, like hit the bumper to like make myself fail on purpose and just like lock that score in.
Yeah.
Which is an incredible quality of life thing, by the way. I'm
What's
so
your
glad
score,
that you
by
can,
the
like,
way?
bump those up.
High score.
Oh God, I don't know. I think I one of those times that I stopped, like I forced myself to stop. I think I hit around 8.5 mil, something like that.
8.5 mil.
Just like weak sauce.
You gotta pump those numbers up. I need to go check because I'm not. I think I crossed the 100 mil.
Hell yeah.
Barrier.
Hell yeah.
Because I have things to do. And like
once I pick this game up, I don't have
a
anything
wife to see.
The combination of just like it's very intuitive. Like you know how to play this game. Everything's smooth, everything works well in itself, but also like the soundtrack is so ridiculously like relaxing and coaxing and just you don't want to stop playing it. I'm seeing these little charms in my sleep now. I'm just like they're moving around in my brain.
And like what a brilliant pairing for a visual novel as well. And I goddamn love that like the story side only takes about hour, 2 hours maybe, depending on your speed of reading. And I love the structure of the narrative where like, yeah, you roll credits on the story, but then like there is stuff to do afterwards. Like that's when you can start like dating everybody and building these relationships. Y'all like really crush this shit. And like, yeah, I'm so happy for all y'all as well. Cause I know like Jenny, when was this officially announced? Because it was the first Wholesome Games, right? Direct?
It was in the first Wholesome Direct, yeah. And it was
over lockdown?
Yeah, over lockdowns. This
right.
is 2020 era.
Yeah.
So it's been 4 years for me, and then for me and Rajan, and then about 5 years for Alex and Morgan.
And I know
how do you feel, by the way?
Yeah, I just wanted to say
wild.
before Jenny jumps in, I want to mention that Jenny's not talking about this because the developer and publisher is Soft Not Weak, which Jenny works for.
Yes,
I guess if we didn't make that obvious enough.
We didn't make that obvious. We should probably tell
the owners. I have not paid for this. But yeah, no, I'm the producer and one of the co-owners of Soft Not Weak, so I will not be talking about the game itself, but I can say we're all very tired, but very, very happy. Honestly, I was going between like total excitement for the game to launch and like the biggest dread ever, simply because of like the climate right now. Putting out a very gay game in 2025 is a little scary. But honestly, everyone has been so incredibly kind and so wonderful. And like, what's great is the feedback that we've gotten, like positive and constructive. Like it's all stuff that on the constructive side, it's all stuff that we had flagged and that we're like hoping to improve upon. So that's really cool. And then the stuff that people are loving is just like the stuff that we hoped people would notice. So it's been great. And honestly, I was thinking, Jill, about what you were saying with like the scale of success and like how it differs so much. Because like one of our goals, for example, was like, hey, we just hope we get like 50 reviews on day 1 or 2, just to hit that like very positive milestone on Steam. And like we did it, and so our scale of success, I think, is smaller than a lot of other teams out there. But at the same time, it still feels like very, very good, which is really cool.
I would like to shout out that 6-1 Indie was the first open critic score because I had to make the page for Spirit Swap for open critic.
I know. Thank you so much.
There is also an impressions piece up on the Indie Informer, which you can go check out as well. But rather than making Jenny blush for the whole section, let's go ahead and
real quick before we move on. Real quick, it is like also weird full circle moment of like I distinctly remember sitting in my Mount Kisco apartment, like in lockdown, like miserable. I think you guys did this during like winter-ish time because I think it was, so I distinctly remember being like freezing my ass off, terrified of the world. And like that was the first time I obviously saw you do content, and it's just such a surreal kind of experience of going back 5 years as like somebody who was not in the industry. 6-1 Indie was, I think, like technically like a month old, and we were just trying to figure out what we were doing. To like being in the industry full time, like being friends with you and doing content with you, and like it's such a weird, amazingly weird, like full circle moment that this is finally out and people are playing it and I'm playing it.
Oh my gosh. I'm really happy the camera's off. It's so sweet.
Oh, man,
That's amazing.
I wish we could see you. I bet you Jenny's doing this. That's what I bet.
Oh my God.
That's her post.
You know me too well.
Speaking of amazing games, let's talk about Citizen Sleeper 2, y'all. Citizen Sleeper 2. If this doesn't end up in Game Awards nominations, I will eat something bad. I don't know. I don't have a hat. I don't have a hat to eat. That's not a thing. Citizen Sleeper 2, obviously a follow-up to Citizen Sleeper 1, not a direct sequel. But all the mechanics are there. If you play the first one, you'll understand what's going on, and kind of the same. It's the same world, even though it's not the same protagonist. It is equally evocative and haunting, and about human connection as much as it means what is it to be human, and exploring like the heaviness of the world and the dread and the things that try to tear us apart, but at the same time, how that doesn't work, and people, regardless of their human status, are going to connect with each other, and the good things are going to happen, and they're going to glimmer through. And like, oh my gosh, I love this game. I love this game. I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of the year this ends up in my top 3, if not top 1. We'll see. Like, there are a lot of good games coming out in 2025. Like, I don't want to but I put this game down, and it gave me something that I admire so intensely with games, where it put me in the shoes of the protagonist in a really dramatically real way. And it's so hard because I want to explain what the ending is in order to explain exactly how that happened. But it's so easy when you are in a game to be like, oh, I'm the protagonist, I'll do this heroic thing and be brave and go off into the distance. But then in my own life, if I have to like echo that bravery in even the smallest freaking way, all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, I don't know if I'm ready for that. But yeah, so Citizen Sleeper made me confront my cowardice in a real way at the end of the game. Did y'all have you finished it?
I have not booted it.
Oh, I have not finished it.
Okay.
But I am really enjoying my time with it. The only feedback I'd have, I think, is I wished I'm interacting with the characters in a lot of really wonderful ways. I wished on some of the like missions that we went on, they interacted with each other a little bit more, because I feel like that would have strengthened sort of the camaraderie and the narrative that they've already set up so wonderfully. But yeah, this is such, like, I really enjoyed Citizen Sleeper 1. I think anyone who enjoyed the first installment will likely very much enjoy this. It's just been a delight to play.
Yeah, and as Jenny is kind of hinting at there, the difference between Citizen Sleeper, or one of the big differences between 1 and 2, is that in 2, you actually go out and kind of explore space around you, and you have missions that you can take people on, and who you take with you can change the skills that you have, so change your success or perhaps not success in a lot of cases. And the cool thing about this game is even when you don't succeed, you feel the weight of that. And it's like, you know how games are always like, oh, your choices matter. In this case, it's not so much your choices matter as in like you'll get a different ending, even though you do see different narrative things. It's like the weight you carry at the end of the game changes by what you have experienced throughout the journey. if that makes sense. So you come to the end of the game a different person, even if you end up, I think there is only one ending to this game. Let me know down in the chat if that's incorrect. But you will be a totally different person depending on who you interacted with, how you interacted with them, your success or failures, the losses that you received because of your failures, like the things you. I personally play this game. It took me about 15 hours because I was literally like every single side quest, every single character I needed to go through and check out thoroughly what was going on with them. But, there are still instances where, the dice roll the wrong way and things don't end up going well. So you're not thought of well and you don't get to go back to that one place or see that person again or recruit them to your team. So it's so good. It makes me want to replay it. And I'm just like, I don't have the time. I'm playing Spirit Swap all this time now.
Oh my goodness. Me too, honestly, but mostly because I'm bug fixing. But yeah, I really would like to get through Citizen Sleeper 2, like maybe this weekend. Like I think I'm gonna hunker down and like get a good set of snacks going and just like immerse myself in this world.
Yeah.
It's also like continues to be some of the most cosplayable characters. I love the fashion in this game, the style. I've always wanted to, if I did cosplay, I would definitely cosplay from this game.
Right. And the writing is just so phenomenally top tier.
Mm-hmm.
The game is, essentially, if you've never heard of this game before and you don't know how it is played, it's essentially a tabletop RPG, but in the virtual space. So you only get like still shots a lot of the time of where you are or who you're talking to. But because of the writing and the absolutely just immersive descriptions that are in there, I can remember things happening which didn't happen, they were not acted out in visual form. And like it's almost like memories forming of things I did.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you play as the titular sleeper who is the concept is so freaking good. Sleepers are a kind of cyborg, like completely synthetic body. And they are uploaded with the memories of a real human being who the real human being has gone into debt so severe that in order to pay off their debts, they literally sell their identity, their memories, their thoughts, their brain emulation to this company in order to put into a robot to be a slave. The human body gets put to sleep and the robot body with their mind comes awake and they're supposed to work for however long, and then when their debt is paid off, the human gets to come back to reality. But in this case, the sleeper, the robot body, has escaped slavery and has to make it out in the world as a fugitive trying to survive. So it pops up so many questions of like, what does it mean to be human? Is it ethical to try to free yourself from a system in which someone else's life, your own life, is based on you completing your slavery? Like, oh, it's so good. There's so many deep questions about what you as a person believe. There's also a very cute cat. Just want to point that out.
Oh my gosh, I haven't gone to the cat. I'm so excited.
I found the cat and I was just like, yeah, nope, this is it. This is top tier game.
Perfect.
So yeah, that is Citizen Sleeper 2. And it works really well on Steam Deck, if anybody wants to check that out as well. Any questions, Mike? Anything that you think people want to know about Citizen Sleeper 2?
It's on Game Pass.
Yeah.
If you're a Game Pass
Because you hit me up early in the process and wanted to know, like, can you start this from the go? Like, you don't need to watch or play. You don't need to have played the first one to understand what's happening, though there are some fun callbacks. So I kind of suggest jumping into Citizen Sleeper 2 if this is the first time you're really interested in one of those games. and you want to be like with the energy in the crowd. But Citizen Sleeper 2, because the mechanics are more varied and you're going to diverse places, there are a little more gameplay elements to kind of wrap your head around. And it's stressful. Like it's almost like, I think of like Cowboy Bebop when it comes to kind of how you feel about it, because you're constantly like, we don't have enough food, we never have enough money, I don't know if we're going to be able to get the fuel that we need to get to the next place, and the clock is always ticking because we are fugitives and we are running from someone. I love this game so much. I can't wait to see it at the end of the year get its flowers, because it deserves it. Yeah.
Sick.
Yeah.
Let's see. Jenny, you've been playing Lock Digital.
Oh my goodness, I have. I know Janet brought it up a couple weeks ago, but for folks who maybe missed that or need a reminder, it is a really cute word puzzle game where you don't actually have to know real words to solve the puzzle. In fact, you you really just are looking to find patterns, and that's where this game like actually really clicked with me. Each set of letters equals sort of a behavior in filling in all the squares to be black. And your goal is just to highlight these sort of word patterns and make your whole grid black. And so you have words like LOK, lock. That makes you have the ability to blacken one additional white square. And then you eventually learn another word that allows you to block 2 adjacent squares as black. And so you build the sort of repertoire of being able to fill a grid with these sort of nonsense, words and letters. There is a story. I think it's like they're the little slug-like creatures that are building a society. I don't really pay attention or care. They're cute. Honestly, I've been playing this on mobile. It's on Steam as well, but it's perfect for mobile. I pick it up. They have a daily puzzle. They also have like a bunch of levels as well, but it's just so nice to pop in. It's taken over my what was the other game we were all playing? The word salad.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. I was doing word salad for a bit. Now I'm on Lock Digital. I'll hop between the two, but these are like my word games currently. Really, really fun. Just charming, simple, straightforward. Love it.
Mike, what is FlyKnight?
Oh, FlyKnight.
So glad I asked.
So FlyKnight.
Oh, it's an actual fly, everybody.
It's an actual fly.
I wasn't prepared for that.
There's been whispers of this game going around the interwebs since January 31st, day of launch, of a really sick Kingsfield-like game that had this like RuneScape aesthetic and art style. Kingsfield, of course, is a dungeon crawler from Software before they made Demon's Souls, Dark Souls, all that. Sold out. Literally sold
games.
So yeah, this has been kind of picking up a lot of steam on Steam and just like conversations around like Blue Sky and whatnot. And I decided to pick it up just to kind of like be part of the cool kids club. And man, for a little bite-sized game that is, will tell me the price on here, for $5.39. What a wonderful, weird dungeon crawler. So FlyKnight, you play as a fly, a squire who kind of like lost touch of his squad, who the squad are on this mission to take down I think it's the Luna Moth, the Luna Witch, something like that, where this witch put a curse on the lands to take away everybody's ability to fly. So it's this squad's mission of the squad of flies mission to infiltrate the Luna Moth's lair and take her down to lift the curse so everybody could fly and be happy again. If you are familiar with Kingsfield, or even more recently something like Lunacid, or I guess Lunacid's the best example. Think Soulsy kind of mechanics in a way where there is like a campfire, for example. That's kind of like your checkpoint system, and you can rest at the campfire to replenish like your vials for health and just make sure you have like a quick save state. But it's not as brutal as a Souls-like, where you're not like with every enemy and whatnot, you're not picking up experience or like the titular souls in order to upgrade and whatnot. The way you start the game is just that's your character. The gameplay loop really is just exploring and getting deeper and deeper into the dungeons, picking up picking up different weapons, different armor, just to make sure you're having a easier time with some of the enemies and whatnot.
Yeah, I saw a shield that looked like a bunch of leeks intertwined.
Yeah,
which
there's
I'm
a
super
leak shield.
interested in.
Yeah.
There's a leak in my shield.
The really cool. So there's also what you're seeing on screen. There's also spells that you could do. Really, really cool. The kind of like unique gameplay twist in terms of combat is that it is limb-based combat. So you could specifically target like an enemy's arm, and like the arm could get dismembered. That way they are not able to use a weapon anymore. You could take out a leg and then they'll hobble your way. You could aim for the head, and enemies will have a hard time tracking you, and eventually they'll die because there's just little blood splurting out. It is so alluring. I started it like the other night at like midnight or something. I got through like the first like not tutorial dungeon, but the first dungeon, and I was like, okay, I'm feeling this. This is pretty dang cool so far. But jumping back into it when I wasn't fighting the EPs, and I actually like had my brain capacity to actually pay attention and appreciate what this game was doing. It really sinks its hooks in you. It is really fun exploring around.
There's literally
I did forget to mention there's also fishing. Yeah, there's also fishing. There's like little ponds that you go out and fish, and the fish, depending on what you're catching, it could obviously it could just heal you.
Human-sized fish? Am I a human-sized fly with a?
We don't know
what's happening here.
I think they're fly-sized fish.
Okay,
I think
everyone go out and go fishing in FlyKnight and tell me what you think.
But yeah, it's just the sense of exploration, the combat itself, the methodical pacing of it. It all just works so well together. And what really like made me fall in love with the game is there's the boss fights. They showed one of them earlier on in the trailers, but it's kind of like a one-on-one encounter with like another knight. And it's just like this really cool, like strategic, like game of chess of like waiting, like he wraps a spell around you, so like there's like a circle of fire that you can't really leave or else you'll get hurt, and you're just kind of like waiting for him to attack so you could like parry, and you could kick somebody and knock him down while they're like laying on the floor, whether you want to attack some of the limbs or just attack him like in the chest full force to get as much damage as you need to while he's down. It's just it's a really just a really well-paced game, and a really, really, really fun mechanically. The other like big thing here, I forgot to mention the other highlight in addition to the dismemberment kind of combat, it's fully co-op, so you could play this as well with like fully online with friends. I think it's I think maybe 4-player co-op. I'm playing solo so far, but there was a moment in the second dungeon where like you can meet up with 2 NPCs. So I got like a little bit of a taste of, this is the boss battle I was just talking about. Got a little bit of a taste of what co-op feels like, and it's super dang fun. So something I would definitely would like to run through with somebody, like whether it's on my save or somebody who wants to jump in for the first time. But yeah. That's FlyKnight. Short banger also. I think I'm close to the end. There's only 3 dungeons. I think I'm currently approaching the final boss, I think. Okay. The developer put out a blog thanking everybody, because obviously in a few short days already at 2,000 plus reviews. He said like, hey, thank you so much. I hear you. You want more, blah, blah, blah. I'm sad to report that there's not going to be DLC or anything, but there will be a sequel down the line. It seems like they're working on some other games.
FlyKnight 2 confirmed.
There will be a new game plus that he mentioned it's not like a straight up new game plus. There's going to be some like new enemies and like possibly new loot and new ways to explore, or like new caverns or whatnot to explore. So at least there will be a reason to go back and run through it again. But yeah, it's really great. I'm excited to roll credits on it right after this podcast because it's legit all I can think about right now. And I highly recommend it, especially for $5.
Go get that. But like,
runs great on deck also.
Mike, that doesn't help because there are so many good games right now, and I'm about to talk to another one. Done. Y'all need to go play too. You need to go play Keep Driving. Like, I don't know if you.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. I don't know if you checked this out. It had a demo, I want to say, in Steam Next Fest last year. Keep Driving is like, it's funny because in its genre tags on Steam, it is not listed as a roguelite, but it's sort of a roguelite. Oh, there it is. No. That's in one of the ones. No, it's not there. It is so based around the nostalgic idea of the road trip and being young and having a free summer and just going out and living your life. And it's set in 2 phases, the road phase and kind of the stop phase, where during the road phase you have hitchhikers you can pick up. You start to like think deeply about your life and the world around you. And you have road events. Road events are going to be like threats literally to your car. So it's like durability, threats to your body, like energy, threats to like how much gas you have, threats to how much money you have. And they are represented by little icons, which you have to match with your skills. If you don't have something to match with them, then that bad thing happens. So if you go up against a gas threat, and you don't have anything to combat it, you lose literal gas in your car. If you run completely out of gas, your game might be over. If you have like, you can try to like start back from your last checkpoint, wherever you last kind of stopped off and got gas or whatever. If you give up all your stamina, if you give up all your money, or if last case scenario, you call mom and dad for help. That's the last thing you want to do when you're a young adult out with the freedom of the open road, but you can if you need to. Mike, I need you specifically to play this game to collect all of the CDs because the music is phenomenal. Like, I think it showed one of the people being like, fucking Werewolf Asso or something is the name of one of the bands.
Okay.
And it's just like all of these band names, and you can make your playlist and put it on your screen and just be cruising down the road, picking people up. The first person I picked up was a guy with a dog, and he's trying to get to like a punk band show or something. So now instead of going to my first objective, now I'm trying to help this dude get to wherever he's trying to get to. And we run into shenanigans. And every time you pick someone up, now you have their skills that you can use during the road events. So you can start to like change things up. Or maybe you I accidentally accepted like a little quest where I was supposed to get a band from point A to point B. But I guess I accidentally was just like, oh, it's backwards from where I'm going now. So I want to cancel that. And it just, instead of just like, okay, no longer having the quest, it literally like acted as if I had kicked them out of my car, but kept all of their instruments.
Oh, interesting.
Which ended up being kind of helpful because I sold those instruments very quickly so that I could have money.
That's what you do it.
Because like you are constantly like running out of gas, constantly running out of money, constantly running out of, you have like buffs and bad effects hitting you, like you get tired and you have to sleep, or you get cold, or you get dirty, and you can buy different things like toilet paper will remove the dirty status, and that'll like all those bad things will hurt you. Like you can see kind of this is the road event system, or help you if you have like buffs, like you're inspired because you're driving through the forest and you start thinking about how much you love the forest. And like sometimes when you stop off, you'll just randomly be able to get out of your car, and now you're like walking through the forest in a kind of like, go forward, go north, go north, go north, and then you find a tent, and then it's like some kind of weird like pen and paper sort of adventure game. Which it's just so, and it's not like you kind of have a goal, like initially when I got out of the car, it was like, go to the music festival. I'm like, okay, cool. That's all the way across the map. But then as you run into people and you run into events and things happen to you, you're kind of like, oh, okay, I'm going to go over here and help this person find their sister. So now I'm like so far off the map. I don't know if I'm ever going to get to the music festival, but that's okay because I had an amazing journey along the way. And once you there are multiple endings. So once you hit an ending, you get like I unlocked a truck. So you start out with the sedan, and you unlock the truck. Now you can get in the truck, and that's going to have different durability and gas and all of that jazz. So you want to start up again and be like, what happened if I actually went back and I helped that band? What happens if I don't pick up that person? What happens if I don't pick up all of the people that I did and pick up a new person? What if I go north instead of south? So it's just impossibly difficult to put down because you just want to see what happens around the corner, and everything is always just a little bit different. And I'm super in love with like the strategy involved with it, and it's a fantastic game. I hope people get to check it out because I feel like not enough people are talking about it, and they need to be.
Yeah. Two quick things. First, side note and backtracking, like you should have done with the band. I know you shouted out says Sleeper working well on Steam Deck. I want to also mention if you have Game Pass Ultimate, it runs super well on your phone, also on cloud.
I love
and
it.
Your internet.
Oh, that's so nice.
So you should play it. Speaking of Steam Deck, did you play this on Deck? How's it run on Deck?
I have played it on both PC and Steam Deck, and it works really well on Deck.
Okay, because it seems like it's very at least mouse heavy control wise.
It's one of the games on Steam Deck that actually uses the trackpad.
Nice.
And it's a little easier to use the trackpad, but you can use the joystick as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm super excited for this. I hope
this
gets...
there it is. Werewolf.
I think we mentioned it on the wish list last week when we brought this up in the upcoming games. I really hope, and I feel it in my gut, that this is going to be like, aside from Citizen Sleeper, just because like a lot of people are actually talking about Citizen Sleeper and like we're excited for it leading up to it. I feel like this has, and I hope it has, the potential of being like this year's like Balatro for all intents and purposes, where it does pick up this like groundswell, like feverish audience and feverish love that kind of breaks through a lot of the noise of the year.
Yeah.
And I want that so bad because YCJY, the devs, are so goddamn talented, and their previous game, Post Void, is such a killer first-person shooter roguelike, and I'm so happy to see them trying something new and keep at it, because I know Post Void, I don't think, did all too well. So yeah, hopefully they get what they deserve in the best way possible. That sounded very threatening for a second. I didn't mean it like that. Ironically enough, before we start recording, I went to my local game shop because I sold my Series X because I could play everything on the fucking phone and Steam Deck now. But I actually saw they had a physical copy of Post Void at the shop. I was like, oh man, maybe I should grab this. Yeah, it was very expensive.
Yeah, keep driving. Amazing game. It really is just the spirit of being young and not having those responsibilities holding you down, and seeing what the world has open to you, and having those stories you'll tell in your later age of like, yeah, that was wild those days. Like I had nothing to eat but a string of cheese, and my car was taped together with duct tape, but man, did we have a wild time riding a sheep down to the music festival. You know what I mean? Like, it's really captured that particular element of life, which is like, somehow it makes me nostalgic for like the open road and that sort of like fantasy, which is not a real thing. And I don't know if it ever really existed in the way that like media wants you to believe, but like,
sure,
this is you getting to really experience that. So go and enjoy. Keep driving. Jenny, tell me about Prickle and this cute little hedgehog.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So Prickle, I don't even remember how I found it, to be honest. I think I was just looking through Steam. Maybe it was a Steam Next Fest demo. I'm not quite sure.
I think it was on a show or something.
Yeah,
maybe
definitely.
it was. I forget.
Yeah.
But I was like going through my Steam demo downloads and I was like, you know what? I just want to play something quick. This looks cute. It was so cute. I picked it up. So Prickle is where it's a puzzle game. It's inspired by like the push puzzles, so like Sokoban puzzles, where you have to essentially push, pull, and rotate boxes to get to an endpoint. But instead of boxes, which is like the traditional sort of puzzle form, you are a father hedgehog who must collect and like gather your children and take them inside, I don't know, back home. And so as you move around, you collect your children by like bumping up next to them, and that attaches you. And so you essentially create like a Tetris piece of hedgehog that is increasingly hard to rotate and manipulate through the environment, because the environment has obstacles like sort of blocks that will block your way, bushes, water. And so you have to like learn how to manipulate attaching yourself to the other hedgehogs and rotate around to get to the increasingly difficult end. Um, it's like it's charmingly rough, I would say. Like the art is very simple. It's black and white. It looks hand drawn potentially, but there's just this utter charm when you play. It's a really simple premise, and what's nice is it's the kind of puzzle game where you can go in, play for a little bit, do a few levels, and then like hop back out. And that's kind of like where my head's at right now. It's just like little puzzle games that you can just hop in, hop out, and not have to concern yourself with a grand narrative or anything. I think there's like 40 levels. And this one, unlike Lock Digital, I don't think they're doing dailies or anything like that. So it's like you buy it, you get the 40 levels, and you're kind of done. But I think it's like $6 or $7. So it's also under 10, which is great. But yeah, really cute.
Speaking of games that don't have a lot of narrative and you can stop whenever you want, you've started playing Arco.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think there's like not really a lot of narrative, but I think the world is structured where I'm like, I feel like there's a narrative there. The game isn't just giving it to me, which isn't a bad thing, but I'm like, the world feels really rich. I also think is really interesting because I think it was you or Janet who mentioned someone calling it like a bullet hell.
Janet said that, and I want to go back. Like I told her later in that episode, I'm like, I wanted to cut between her saying that and me explaining the game like the week before that, and having absolutely no mention of bullet hell and a lot of mention of narrative. I'm just saying, love you,
So
Janet. You're not
funny.
here to defend yourself.
Yeah, it's definitely not. I think it okay. The tutorial took me kind of an embarrassingly long time to figure out.
Same
if
here.
you know, you know.
I had played that tutorial like 3 times, having done previews, so I was able to jump in pretty quickly when it actually came out.
Yeah, well, it's like, yeah, I died so much in the tutorial. There's like one section in
curve.
particular.
It's the curve bullet.
When you curve, and I felt like such a dingus, and I was like, I don't like
I don't get it.
everyone's so hyped about this game, and I can't even get through the tutorial. Oh my gosh. I persisted though, and once I got through it and I figured it out, it like sank in, and now I'm enjoying it. It's like it's like a strategic game. It's much more strategic than I thought it would be. For some reason, it says turn-based strategy on the Steam page, so I'm just like, what was I thinking? I don't know.
It's turn-based real time. It is a interesting mixture of the two things.
Yeah, because I think if it was just turn-based strategy, I think I would have been much more acclimated to it. But because you like set up your move and then everything happens at once, it requires almost like a chess-like level of foresight that I don't have. I'm simple. I just like to attack and then win. And this is like, no, you have to actually essentially learn how to dodge and defend yourself, in ways that I'm not familiar with. So
Right.
other than that, though, I'm having a really good time with it. I just got through, I'm into the second chapter, and what I like is that I'm seeing already the ties between these narratives that are set up, because the first chapter focuses on a character, and then the second chapter happens and it's a different character, but in this same world. And I don't know what time period, but it feels close enough. And so I like the potentially like almost generational feel this has. So yeah, really cool. Yeah. But if you can get past the tutorial, that's really the main thing.
In you. You can do it.
Yeah. No, I'm excited. I definitely will be finishing this one.
Speaking of things that are a little difficult to grasp as far as combat, I also played Tales of Iron 2 recently came out. It is absolutely fantastic. I love the artwork. I love the atmosphere. I love the narrative storytelling. They added in like magic, and you've got a lot of different like types of combat. I think the game is itself asking a little more than mechanically it allows for, which makes, the ultimate perfect storm of there is no auto saving. So I had a horrible situation where I attempted to fight a boss over and over again, which is normal. You'll do that in this game. But because it doesn't autosave, when I was running back to the save point, I fell off a ledge and died and had to go back to the save before defeating the boss, which I had to then fight again and again and again. The game does allow for dropping the difficulty at any moment, which is fantastic. And it let me get through that moment and not just rage quit and walk away. But I think there's just a slight, like in the like normal difficulty level, there's just a slight more asked of you than you can really give. Because the game is not sprightly like a Nine Souls or something where it like glides and it's beautiful and it's weighty. It feels like you're in medieval armor. It's like it takes a little bit longer than you think to dodge or to block, and that split second is what's going to make that fight difficult. But yeah, there's just so much cool with exploration. Every single level is so detailed and varied, and it's got like different cultures. It's called Tales of Iron, but it's spelled like tail, like
miles per hour.
And it's just like different microcosms of like animals. So it's in the ratdom, and you like go out and you meet like owls, and you go out and you meet like frogs, and everything is just so detailed, and it's really, really thorough world building, really cool exploration, 2D Metroidvania-esque style of, and secrets kind of thrown in there where it's like, oh, what happens if I look under this ledge? And then, oh, there's actually a hidden cave in here, and I'm finding new armor sets, and it's really cool. It's also got like kind of Monster Hunter feel to it, because you can take on like monster hunts and get special ingredients to make new armor sets, which is the whole thing. And you can go off and just do that. There you go, Volvi. I'm assuming Volvi has a question.
Yeah. Sorry, that was a confusing interaction.
I'm sorry.
I'm very interested in Tales of Iron 2. I played a little bit of Tales of Iron 1, and I was vibing with it, but I stopped because I felt like I was going to burn myself out before the sequel came out. Do I need to play through the first one? Is it like narratively attached? Is it its own thing?
It's its own thing. It continues a story. It's obviously in the same world. New characters, but you're going to see some of the original game kind of seeping in, and there were like, yeah, it's not anything where you're like, I don't know who this is and I'm supposed to like this guy or whatever. Like you're going to be able to jump in this and be just fine.
Cool. The autosave thing is weird. That feels...
Yeah. It's so bizarre. Because I'm like, this doesn't need to be a thing. It's
like we kind of moved past that.
Yeah. Like I get...
society of gamers.
I get the push and pull between risk and reward, and when you do triumph, you feel really good about yourself, and you're like fist pumping and all of that. But like the absolute like pain I felt at that moment, having just tripped off a 10-foot ledge and knowing I had to do all of that again, was just, it took the fight out of me, and that's not what you want in a game like this. Yeah. But really cool, very cool system of like elemental weapons and armor, and playing against all the different enemies. Like you can change all your armor on the fly because you figure out like, oh, this thing is weak to fire or poison or whatever. And yeah, very creative. I can't imagine the amount of work that went into building that many sets of armor with that many different like individual stats. Good for them. Good for the team. Go check it out if that's what you're interested in. I also want to shout out to Stone of Madness, another game that I'm like, this is for sickos. Like, if you're into a kind of medieval stealth strategy game, this might be for you. Beautiful hand-drawn, sort of Sword in the Stone is the touch point for me with the like the cutscenes and how they're done graphically. It's such a old school like 60s animation art style. It's weird in that it seems like the narrative fantastic, the gameplay fantastic. It feels to me like two different teams worked on them and they didn't really talk about how to stitch those two together. So things like the tutorial weirdly continues from part 1 to part 2 as if you'd never seen them, and people interact with you as if you've never seen them before or interacted with them. And but besides that, if you can look past that kind of weirdness, it's a really cool game. It's really hard to put down. I really want to like perfect and just like stand there and watch everybody, use all my skills to get through and find out whatever the mystery is of this. It's an 18th century like madhouse in a monastery in hills, like mountaintops somewhere, like away from all of humanity, and something weird is going down. There's some sort of supernatural happenings. This girl, by the way, I think her name is Lorna, is the best. Literally, she can just like pop people in the head. That's all I need. I need to just knock people out. So yeah, go check that out if that's what you're interested in.
Very different game for the Game Kitchen. Of course, Blasphemous. Folks.
Yes. They love the theme of like religion and heresy and what's going on there. And so they're kind of keeping with those themes. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's, if I haven't missed anybody, I think that's what we've been playing this week. Lots of things to be playing. So many games to check out.
I was going to make a joke, but Jenny would get mad at me for embargo reasons.
How dare you, Mike?
Oh my goodness, yep. You should tell me later.
Yeah. We'll tell you guys in the chat. Don't worry about it. But that's the end of this week's council. Thanks for everybody for joining us. Mike, Jenny, thank you for being here. Even if Jenny, you're here, but like your camera wouldn't allow you to actually be here.
Next week it'll be fixed.
Next week, all of us are, knock on wood, all of us are coming together.
Oh wait,
again.
Next week I'm in DICE. So I won't be here next week.
Who knows?
Maybe
no one's ever gonna come together. We had like the first couple episodes, and then we'll never see each other again. But that's the end of this week's council. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and the Indie Council has its own socials. We are now primarily on Blue Sky at theindiecouncil.com, I believe. It's got a .com on it. So this session is closed. Go play some indies.